Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Side by Side Digital. I'm your host, Rebecca Shively. We've got a great program lined up for you today. This month, we're talking about mindset and entrepreneurship. We all know that agriculture is changing faster than ever, and an entrepreneurial mindset can help us be adaptable in the face of change and take calculated risks in the pursuit of growth. More than ever, it's important to stay competitive, and the right mindset can allow us to be innovative and creative in your approach to agriculture. We're joined today by Dr. Tom Field, Director of the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We're excited to hear more from Dr. Field about how we can all cultivate a mindset around entrepreneurship. Dr. Field, thank you so much for being here. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking part of your day to give some thought. We build a mindset that actually leads to a different way of approaching problems. And I think the thing that all of you can recognize is that there are problems you've encountered every day in farming. I have a friend in Iowa. He says every day on our problems, we're like, I'm going to work my way through this. I'm going to solve this problem, and I'm going to handle it in a rational, thoughtful, meaningful way. And there's times we encounter problems and we melt down. I'm sure someday on our ranch in Colorado, there's going to be an archaeologist that's going to find a lot of hammers, and he's going to say, I wonder what happened. And what happened is that we were a family of hammer throwers when things got too frustrating. So mindset has such a powerful approach to how we actually interact with the world. So let me start with, and if you remember back to your high school days, or if you're an American literature reader, you know this guy, Samuel Clemens. We probably remember him as Mark Twain. And I want to lead off with sort of a disclaimer. And it's important to do this because the world, as Rebecca said, is changing. It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. So let that soak in for a minute. It's not what you don't know. It's what you know for sure that just isn't true. That's what gets you in a jam. And in a rapidly changing world, we need to keep that in the back of our heads. And it's so easy to get caught up in our assumptions, in our pattern, in the cadence of how we're doing a business or running an enterprise, that it's very, very easy to get trapped into this used to work thinking. And we've got to challenge that all the time. There's one other little disclaimer, and maybe this is just a truth I want to share, and I've always loved this picture because it's a reminder that there is always someone bigger who will grab us by the back of the shorts and sling us around. There will always be problems. There will always be challenges, and there will be times that we're going to feel a little bit unprepared for that rapid change. So even cultivating a great mindset doesn't mean we're going to be immune from some surprises, some giants, and occasionally being slung around by the back of our underwear. So keep that in mind as we go, right? A great mindset is no promise of absolute convenience and ease. But in the age of VUCA, the volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous world that we live in, there is a recipe for disaster if we want to pursue it. And every institution, trust you me, the university might be the most prone to what I'm about to show you. Certainly, long-standing old institutions that have survived can get themselves in some jams if they do this next bit of thing. And this next bit is, if you want 3 attitudes that are absolutely guaranteed to create folly, in other words, something done for no effect, do these 3 things. Obliviousness to the growing dissatisfaction of the constituents. Know your customer. The primacy of self-aggrandizement. In other words, making yourself bigger and more important than you really are. And then the illusion of invulnerable status, that, well, we're immune from that change. Entrepreneurship and innovation and creativity have always throughout history pushed, shoved, cajoled, and changed existing entities. And it's those entities who see themselves as somehow magically immune from all of that, who see themselves as smarter than they really are, who see themselves as we know better, the customer knows nothing. Those are the organizations that are quickly and oftentimes disposed of in a wave of change. Look, progress requires uncertainty. There's just no question about that. As we work with lots and lots and lots of young companies, none of them have a certainty. Every new start has a set of assumptions that we're going to have to test as we another. Vendors will promise that this will be delivered on time, and we all know in the post age of COVID, the supply chain issues, in fact, are real, and it's going to take some more time before we actually clean all of that up. So uncertainty is part of the game. Now, here's another one that I think is worth thinking about. So who handles chaos best? That are, number one, agile. In other words, they retain the capacity to be nimble in the face of changing conditions. Quality. In this age, quality of product, quality of service, quality of interaction, just is the differentiator. And it's amazing how quickly we have become accustomed to poor service or no service or service that actually is mad at us for asking the question, right? So all those things are important. And then connection, the power of connection. Those organizations that are able to connect to people, connect disparate ideas, connect resources, and hold the community together, be the glue, if you will, are the organizations that actually handle chaos and change better than any others. I was really sad this past week. I got an email from a guy I've followed forever in the business world named Tom Peters. You may have read Search for Excellence, Thriving on Chaos, in Pursuit of Wow. One of the greatest thinkers in the world of business ever. I've learned so much from him. I'm now 80 some years old and announced his retirement. But the things he said way back in the 1970s were, look, if you're an agile company that will focus on quality and deliver connections, you've got a fighting chance to change. So whether you're retooling an existing entity, building a new one, building a side gig, whatever it is, remember, agility, quality, and connection, being good at that's powerful. Well, entrepreneurship is ultimately the result of two basic processes. The first process is mindset, how we see the world, how we think about problems, how we approach things. And we'll talk a lot about that. But then action. Without action, mindset is just, it might be self-fulfilling, really good about it, but in fact, it doesn't yield anything because we stayed on the sidelines. So mindset plus getting off the sidelines into the game, that's entrepreneurship. So never, ever, ever in the midst of our talking about mindset, forget that action is important. And our belief is, and what we've proven time and time and time again, is that you start before you're ready, you learn as you go, fail forward, fail fast, fail cheap, learn like crazy, and never, ever, ever put your risk so far out that you can be taken out with one bad choice. So we'll spend a little bit of time thinking about action, but a lot of today is just about this whole thing of mindset. Well, there's a whole series of forces that press and push and shape, if you will, entrepreneurs. And three of those forces are resistance, regret, and motivation. Now, this is going to seem a little bit, I apologize for that, but I really believe that mindset comes from something deeper. And there's some really great brain science that supports these three things I'm about to advocate for. And by understanding resistance, regret, motivation in our own lives and in the lives of the team we're building, our employees, even our family, even the community, to be honest, if we understand those things and can shape and form and work through those, we're gonna do a better job of creating a company that's got some opportunity to succeed and to sustain. So let's just talk about the challenges of resistance. And resistance is anything that gets in the way of that which is noble, honorable, and worth doing. Somebody the other day was saying, well, I really don't understand resistance. They said, like, what do you mean? I said, well, it's the things that get in our way when we're about to do something good. They said, when we're about to do something that's probably not in our best there's little resistance. And I look back on my freshman year of college and I think there was no resistance. It was because I wasn't up to anything that was much good when I was 18 years old. So where does resistance come from? Well, number one, understand that resistance is invisible. It's not something that we can take a cutting torch to. It's not something that we can recreate, cut apart, rebuild. Resistance is invisible. It simply shows up when we're doing something important. We see it in our kids, we see it in ourselves, and we certainly see it in the world of entrepreneurship. It's also internal. We self-perpetuate. Most of the things that get in our way, while oftentimes we want to blame some external force, that resistance comes internally. It's insidious. It is always a lie. Resistance is always lying to us, and it is always present. We need to understand that we're going to impersonate. It's not about fate. It's not trying to beat you. It's universal. It cares not who it stops, right? And it's infallible, right? It's looking for that which is good to try to stop. Now, you may be saying, "Oh, this just can't be." Well, all this comes from a great bit of work by a guy named Stephen Pressfield, who wrote two really. One of them is called "Do the Work." It's short, direct, and to the point, and will introduce you to resistance. Another one is The Art of, or The War of Art, which is about what gets in the way of creativity. Well, it's all these things. No one escapes the battle with resistance. Everyone has it, right? If you're raised, I have 10-year-old twins. Trust me, I'm battling resistance all the time. It never sleeps. It lurks in the shadows. We fight that dragon every day, and it plays for keeps. And folks, I sounds dramatic. I am not trying to be dramatic. Resistance plays for keeps. It tries to kill our genius, our soul, that unique gift that comes from God, that we're put here to do, that work we're supposed to do, the purpose we were put here for. Resistance gets in the way of it. And so it's important to recognize that, because we find with young companies, resistance shows up over and over and over and over again. My dad was in the military, was a first sergeant in the Army, and he had a saying that he brought us up with: if your advance is going too smoothly, you're walking into an ambush. So resistance is part of the game, and we're going to have to learn with our mindset and the way our habits work to actually fight off resistance. The other one is regret. And regret, we've all seen the tattoos, right? No regrets, and the funny ones, the ones that are misspelled, right? Which you're like, oh, I bet now you're thinking, maybe I do have a... But a life of no regret is truly a life that wasn't lived. There's a great book, and I'm going to just show you the cover really quickly, right? By the way, I have no stake in this. I don't know Daniel Pink, but this has been one of the most important reads I've had in a long, long time. You can also get it on Audible. Great thing to listen to during harvest season when you're on autopilot. But it's The Power of Regret: How Looking Backward Moves Us Forward. Kind of developed this, like, we want to be insulated from regret, from failure, from mistakes. But in fact, regret is one of our greatest teachers. And what Pink says is, look, the things that we have the greatest regrets about fall into one of two buckets: the things we chose to do and the things we chose not to do. What we said yes to and what we said no to. He did a tremendous amount of work, a lot of survey work, both in the United States and globally. And in all cases, across all demographics, across all cultures, the bucket where people had the highest regret, think about it, is it what we said yes to or what we chose not to do? The bucket with the highest regret was the things we chose not to do. Tons to be learned from this. So failing to take action is a major regret the older people get. And in the slice of the demographic of people 50 to 70 and on up to 80 even, what Pink found was most regretted was not starting a business. In that age group of folks, looking backwards at the end of their career, at the end of their professional walk, they were like, I wish I would have had the gumption to start that business. So it's a mindset thing, right? And Pink says, look, there's 4 kinds of regret that we deal with. The first is foundational, right? And these are been on a path back from a failure to self-regulate in terms of food consumption, and have been on a diet for the last 90 days, fixing a regret about a foundation, right? There's moral regret, right? The failures to choose right over wrong. And again, another one of the buckets. There's boldness regret, and those are regrets that come from playing it safe. And then there's connection regrets, regrets arising from not starting or maintaining a relationship. And Pink uses these 4 buckets and lots of examples from the research, from real world examples, to talk about how we can learn from and correct regret. The entrepreneur must be ready to deal with regret, because no entrepreneur ever in the history of humankind has gotten it all right all the time. Had dinner last night with a wonderful entrepreneur, great company, housed or headquartered in Iowa. And we just had this great conversation about all the mistakes that we've made in businesses and in running an educational program designed to help people. And the more we talked, the funnier it got, because we were like, man, we've got more over here that we messed up and learned from than we got right the first time. So I think there's some kind of truth in what Pink's saying. Now, the third force, so we've got resistance, that which is trying to get in our way, regret, not learning from mistakes and not recognizing that our past can inform our future. The third one is motivation. Where does motivation come from? And again, and I must be a Daniel Pink, another book about what drives motivation. And he said, look, here's the deal. There are 3 basic things. And the first of these is autonomy, right? And for the entrepreneur, if they don't have autonomy, they're not going to if you don't have autonomy, you're not going to start a company, right? And autonomy to me means if I've got a pebble in my shoe, I can stop and take the pebble out. But I can also, if it's a little pebble and I want to keep going, even though there's pain, I can choose to keep going, right? But it's up to me to decide, pull the pebble out or leave it in. So here we go, right? Number 1, autonomy, the ability to make my own choices. The second is mastery, to get good at something. We've kind of lost in the world, with our fascination with virtual technology. We've sort of lost this notion of craftsmanship, but it's absolutely fundamental. Good at something, to become a craftsman is really, really important. And a craftsmanship level of expertise requires a lot of time, energy, investment of blood, sweat, and yes, tears. So craftsmanship is another piece of motivation. So if I can have autonomy and I am given the opportunity to get really good at, those are 2 key elements that will keep me motivated as the entrepreneur. The third one is am I working for something larger than myself? What we find with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial ventures, if they are built for one person's desire for wealth, they are going to sell. They are going to sell or they are going to crash, one or the other, right? But if there's a deeper purpose, a greater purpose, and this is why we love so much working with family businesses, there is a purpose deeper than that. And we're finding out of the Engler program, almost all of our young companies are being built to sustain because there's purpose in it. And there is something greater than just their own return on investment that's at play. Does profit matter? Absolutely. Do not get me wrong. Profit is fundamental to this. But if you can have autonomy, mastery, and purpose, kids, or raising a team to help us with our company, or building a side gig, or diversifying the enterprise, whatever it is, if we can figure out how autonomy, mastery, and purpose influence the people around us and what they need in those spaces, we're going to build a better company, and we'll build it faster and it will sustain longer. So again, mindset, action, entrepreneurship, right? That's where, okay, so what, right? What do I do with all this? Why would I even care? Well, because the reality is all of us are likely going to start something if you haven't already. And why would we start a new enterprise? And a new enterprise does not have to be an all-in 100% moonshot kind of deal. It could be a side gig. It could be a seasonal business. It might even be entrepreneurship played out in the world of our nonprofit volunteer. But we're going to start something, right? Most parents get involved in their kids' activities because they want to see it done better, more, with more enthusiasm, with more values aligned with the family. We're more engaged through our churches because we see something that we want to go resolve because we're frustrated about it. Right. So frustration is the first birth of entrepreneurship. I've got something I'm frustrated. I'm not going to sit around and cry. I'm going to go resolve it. Pure necessity. I think about my ancestors getting off that boat in New York, dirt poor, uneducated, illiterate, couldn't sign their name if they had to. They had no choice. Figure it out or die. So pure necessity, right? We've all had pivots in our lives. In a company situation where all of a sudden there's a downsize and there's 300 people who are looking for work. And you'll find the entrepreneurs in that space because they're like, okay, never again. I may not succeed on my own, but I'm never leaving it up to somebody else. To build wealth, right? And wealth measured multidimensionally, certainly financially, but also to build the wealth of better, in the world of farming and ranching, better livestock, a stronger community, a healthier family, whatever it might be, to seek meaning, to have purpose, right? Back to Pink's notion about motivations, to serve specific customers, a group of people. And let's be very, very clear, the number one mistake young entrepreneurs make, we want to serve everybody. Oh, really? Right? And there was a time I believed that, oh, no, right? The customer who does, I'm not real interested in serving that customer. I hope somebody else will, but I don't want it to be me. The customer who is going to be on my people 24/7 is just hard to deal with and causes me more trouble than value. Man, I hope my competitors get that cat because they're better over there than they are with me. So being clear about the customer you want to serve, leveraging talent, right? In a multi-generational family business, all of a sudden and they've got this trailing spouse, right? The daughter-in-law whom we love and the son-in-law who we're like, okay, put him in the back. If he gets run over, it's okay. But in truth, right, the trailing spouse is really, how do we leverage their talent? I watched my mom build a business at age 50. She was leveraging talent that she had used to raise 3 knuckleheaded sons, help my dad get a ranching business up in the air and really running. And then she was like, I want to leverage my business. And she did, and ran it for 30 years. Or to solve a problem, because we just want to solve a problem. And it doesn't have to be grandiose. It can be small. So these are all the reasons that people start. So as you're thinking, why would I start a new thing, a side gig, a side hustle, a new business? It likely will come from one of those circles. And look, the new economy is going to be about side gigs and pop-ups and seasonal enterprises and diversification already doing or some new channel. But the reality is this is a tough economy. Like, sorry, CNN, sorry, all the pundits, this is a tough economy. And so we can either sit around and whine about it, or we can go do something about it. And side gigging, pop-up shops, seasonal enterprises, diversification, all those things are going to be critical in entrepreneurship, small, and I'm not person companies. I'm talking about 3 and 5 people kind of companies are what's going to pull us out of this mess. And it's been true through history. It's going to be true now. It's going to be true in the future. We're not going to do it with these grandiose, nonsensical plans that roll out of Washington, D.C. It's going to be because individual people say, I'm taking the future in my own hands and I'm going to make something happen. So, I think, and diversifying income, right? I mean, the day of I'm not sure those days are here to stay. So how do I do this? How do I go at this process? Well, number one is the first thing we do, whether it's as an individual or as a family or a team or whatever, is where are we today? And let's take a really hard look at that. Let's be very honest about where we are today in this whole process. What's our situation? What are our resources? What are our talents? As we take inventory, right? And then we ask ourselves the question, okay, what's the aspiration, right? Because I have a dream of playing in the NBA, right? It's a cool dream, but it's not going to happen. Why? Because I wasn't, one, gifted with any capacity to jump. Number two, I am slow as molasses. And number three, I didn't want to work at it. So it's just a dream. An aspiration is that which I will devote myself to. I will sacrifice for it. I will cry over it. I will struggle for it. And I will cry in the process of working to achieve it. That's an aspiration. An aspiration is worthy of our life. A dream is just a really good song. So, what's the aspiration? And be very clear about it. Be clear about that aspiration. In some cases, it's really simple. I need additional money to cover the insurance cost that's not covered in our current situation. There's nothing wrong with that aspiration. That is a clear, honest assessment, right? Here's where I am today. Here's where I want to get, right? The aspiration might be, I don't want to work for someone else ever again. The aspiration might be, I want to take our company and I want to double its revenue so that we can bring 2 more generations of business. Whatever that aspiration is, right? Then you look at the gap and you say, okay, let's take a look. Here's where we are. Here's where we want to be. And here's the gap. Here's the missing link. Then we begin to form a plan. We recognize that the plan itself doesn't matter. The planning does. That we cannot plan our way into excellence. We're going to have to execute our way into excellence, and that action of the process. So in essence, it's gap analysis, right? Here's where I am. There's where I want to be. What's it going to take to cross that chasm, that gap in my current situation? It's not any more complicated than that. And I think there's lots and lots of business thinkers who, it's triangulate this and forecasting, no, like, where am I? Where do I want to be to build that bridge? And then I think there's 3 other questions that in the world of entrepreneurship that drives our mindset is, number one is why? Why do I want to do this? What's the motivation? Right. And this is one where we have to learn to ignore the outside voices. I mean, I've caught myself still, I'm 65 years old, and every now I catch myself thinking, I'm still trying to please dad. My dad's been gone for 13 years, right? I mean, it's crazy. I pleasing him, right? Hopefully I'm going to see him in heaven someday, and we'll have a chance to catch up. But no, what do I want? Why am I doing this? That matters, right? Who's it for? Now that also matters, right? Who's going to be served in this? Both the internal and the externals is inside the family and potentially even inside myself, but also the externals like employees and customers and vendors, etc. And then what's it supposed to do? What's like if I'm going to go do this new enterprise, what's it for? What's the promise I'm making to the market? Well, those are another set of questions. And we talk around here all the time. Look, if you spend all of your time trying to figure out just exactly the money and you're just trying to figure out what you want, you're going to miss. You've got to ask, what do others want? So that's why what it's for is so very important. The entrepreneur also has to ask 4 additional questions. What are you afraid of? Will you regret not giving it a go? How am I going to measure success? And what are the barriers? And is the barrier actually just an excuse, resistance, not to act? So let's talk about this really quickly. Entrepreneurs, what they have to do, find a pain point. Don't start with a solution. Find a problem that you want to resolve for a set of customers. Live with the fact that oftentimes the customers you're trying to serve are unhappy about something, right? They're really good customers because they're motivated to act. Remember, in innovation, you don't have to take a moonshot. What actions are going, you can, but it doesn't have to be. What actions will lead to growth? That's kind of the secondary, a more medium level of time horizon innovation. And the third one, and this is the one we love the most, is what can I do today with what we have? And that's an important place to start. What can I do today? Because I get focused on the moonshot, man, getting there, that's a big one. But if I'm going to start a side gig in my own town, that's a little different story. So start with what you've got today, that you can move forward. Innovation is about questions, not answers. It's about the power of experimentation. So don't be afraid to experiment and prototype. Lots of unexpected conversations. The more conversations you have, the better. The more eclectic and weird your friend group and your contact group, the better. And recognize that real innovation outcome, it is a process. So what do we do about this? And I'll give you just some real quick thoughts. Number one, if you want to start something new, if you want to innovate, if you want to create, have to make time for it. And it's possible because we give about 6 hours a day to screen time, and the average American gives about 2.5 hours a day to social media. So stop the social media and you have all of a sudden 2.5 hours a day to about 14 to 16 hours a week, which gives you the opportunity to start something new. Find the problem, ask people about it. Lots of conversations. When you're having the conversation, remember your job as the entrepreneur before you build the solution is to listen to the customer. Listen to the person with the problem. You don't have an opinion until you know what they think. Then co-build the solution. Actions. The name of the game for entrepreneurs is the ability to connect different concepts, different ideas, get out of the silo mentality, hook things together. That's when the real magic happens. Remember to play and experiment. What I love about kids is they will figure it out. They will play. They're unafraid of trying things. They will mix the colors. They will they will color outside the lines. They build things faster, better, and with more enthusiasm than adults with Legos or any other building material. Right? So don't forget to play. Never forget these words from John Steinbeck in East of Eden. And now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. Perfection is the enemy of innovation. Perfection is the enemy of creativity. And perfection plus comparison is absolutely the thief of entrepreneurship. So let go of perfection. It's not going to happen. Learn to focus, right? Ryan Harrison, who teaches big league hitters how to hit better. You can have the most beautiful swing. See the ball. It just doesn't matter. Focus, focus, focus. The other thing I would strongly encourage as you're building something new is slow yourself down long enough to go faster. Think through the steps, get things in the right order, and operate at a pace, at a cadence. And oftentimes for things to get clear, we have to kind of slow the game down so that the game will come to us. Let go of balance. Person who talks to me about work-life balance, I'm just going to scream. There is no work-life balance. There is, though, work-life blend, like good coffee or good whiskey. The blend is what matters. How do I blend things? Because balance, it's too hard. We're always fighting for stability. Blending makes a lot more sense, and we get a lot more satisfying drink at the end of the day when we blend. There's going to be barriers. Live with that. You're going to have to slay some dragons. Live with that. And the last thing I would share with you is that the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new lands, but in seeing with new eyes. That's the power of perspective. That's the power of the mindset that's able to see what everybody else is missing. Well, I'd love to now just be quiet and take some questions, and I'm going to stop sharing, Rebecca, and we'll jump over here and see if there's any questions that people have that they'd like to pursue.
First question, you mentioned that idea of pain points and discovering kind of what problems customers are having. Do you have any advice, especially for farmers and ranchers where maybe it's hard to feel close to customers or you don't see them all the time? Any advice on discovering those pain points or best practices?
You bet. Sure. So for pain points, finding problems, just keep a log of everything that aggravates you all day long. Literally, like the gate latch, the PTO hookup, whatever, anything that aggravates you, right? I mean, which this is, so if you're a grumpy old guy like me, this is a beautiful thing because you get to write down all the things that kind of like, and you write them down for about 2 weeks. You go back and you look and you, okay, which of those are ones that really do, if I could solve that, my life would be better. Or better yet, hand it to your spouse and say, which of these, if we solve them, would make me easier to live with? That's how you find pain points, is you look for the things that just aggravate you, right? Uber didn't start because somebody didn't like yellow cars driven by somebody else hooked to a central dispatch. Uber started because somebody couldn't catch a cab, right? They were aggravated by how slow it was. They weren't mad at the cab company per se. They were just aggravated about for it now because I took too long in that meeting. Get me there now. Well, it was an aggravation, right? That's why it started. Most of our software hacks are because it makes life either more convenient or because we were unhappy with the speed at which something happened, right?
Another question that came in, can you talk about the financial barriers to starting a business? I think lots of people have great ideas, but they resist due to potential financial hardship.
Yeah, so here's one of the things that I think that is challenging. They're like, if we're doing the moonshot, like, okay, we're doing a moonshot and we're in the venture, but could we build a prototype pretty cheaply to just see if the darn thing will work? I'm going to give you just a great example. Marble Technologies, a company I'm very familiar with, Nebraska brain power, hooked to MIT engineering capability, now got working models inside beef packing plants, headed for pork packing plants. The first robot they built, the model was built in the chief engineer's dining room. All right? Wasn't cheap, but it was a lot cheaper than going out and buying a building and getting all this stuff. He just built it and they like cobbled it together in the garage and put it on the dining room table and practiced with it. Well, that's how companies that really have longevity make it work. But if you're not doing a moon, then you figure out what's the cheapest, fastest way I can experiment whether I even want to do this. And we run a little experiment here called the new venture, a lab. Most of our students go through this. We give them or their team this massive investment of $50, and we say you've got 8 weeks, 10 weeks to go create a company and generate revenue. Do whatever you want as long as it's legal and you're willing to tell mom about it. Go for it. The 1,500 into these little ventures every semester, and their gross, back out is between 18 and 20,000 bucks. So we're getting our 7 to 10x return, and they're learning which things will work and which things won't. So yes, money matters. And the biggest challenge with money will not be on the very front end, especially if it's a growth company. Your biggest between year 3 and year 7, when all of a sudden you're growing. So you've got to have more assets, more people, and now your cash is disappearing. And that's one where, frankly, that's another real opportunity in the world of entrepreneurship. People who can figure out a way to bridge that funding gap are going to do really, really well, because if we can fill that need, we're just going to entrepreneurship. So what I'm saying is money matters. Figure out how to do it the cheapest possible way, test it, prototype it, and do your testing really early, test your assumptions really early, do it before you've spent very much money. If you're young and you don't have a family yet, ramen noodles, peanut butter, and Cheese Whiz will keep you alive. Never spend any money on cheap as you can do it, cut the corners you can cut. And then as good ideas come along, what we've seen, and I know this sounds trite and it sounds too simplistic, but I really believe this, great ideas as they begin to emerge, money shows up.
Maybe another question related to barriers, especially in family businesses, maybe if the young person doesn't quite isn't in the driver's seat yet. Any advice on kind of bringing others along with the vision when you're trying to start something new or maybe outside of the box? How do you get buy-in from maybe the older generation or family members who might need a little bit of convincing?
Yeah, I think it's one where this is probably unique family to family, just because you've got, right? Let me just give you a quick case study. We'll use myself as an example. So I grew up in a business that had had Hereford cattle since Noah. I mean, forever. And I went to my dad and I said, look, got this commercial cattle deal. We're going to need to crossbreed. If we're going to survive, we're going to have to go there. He didn't believe it. And so he didn't really want to do that. I said, well, what would happen if we diversified the purebred division and we went into additional breeds? And he goes, I don't want to do that either. But he said, if you want to do that, you get your own financing. I'll lease you X amount of pasture. You can test it. Everybody in the family was mad at me. Our entire crew was mad at me because I was going out, I was buying another breed of cattle, bringing them in. And it created all kinds of division. But my dad was smart enough to say, okay, I'm not going to take any risk. I'm going to let you fail, or at least have the chance to succeed. And I really hoping I was going to succeed, but also prepared, to kind of pick me up, dust me off and say, I told you so. I mean, that's the way I was. And so I think a family, what they have to do is they've got to decide, okay, where are we going? And do we want to bring more people back into this business? And if we are, let's diversify the business. If you believe it, start. Don't put the whole thing at risk. Don't risk everybody. Just start, test it, try it. Go tell everybody, I need a stress break. I'm going on vacation for a week, and go shadow somebody for a week who's doing kind of what you want to do and figure it out. So that's a really incomplete question, but it spans kind of the spectrum of families, right? The families that are super resistant, the families that are like risk tolerant so long as they don't feel any pain. That was my family. And I'm gonna put one other out there, and this is gonna sound harsh, and I don't mean it to be, and I'm certainly not urging people to just absolutely go here without thinking. But sometimes you've got to leave what you know behind. And a lot of great businesses started because somebody said, look, I love my family enough that I want to have the relationship, but I can't be in business with them. And I'm going to go start something. And scary, but in the big picture, what would you rather have? Be in a family business where you're completely at age 80 thinking to yourself, all I can think about is the regret? Or do you want to preserve the relationship, give up the safety of where you are, and go to the new horizon that even if you fail, you can find the next thing beyond that?
Nice. Maybe a question that came in that builds on that. Any advice on partnerships? Is it better to partner with someone with similar goals or to kind of go solo? I think you're maybe getting a little bit at that, but.
Yeah. Boy, the partner. Whew. Number one, never do a 50-50. Never do a 50-50. And I know every one of you who are family business owners go, wait a minute, I'm in a 50-50. Well, maybe I shouldn't do that. Well, because somebody's got to have the deciding vote. I will tell you that the one thing that I encourage young companies, and we work really hard on this here, and we don't have lots of companies that are super attractive to equity right off the bat. But even so, we tell you, like, don't give away equity. As much as you can avoid losing equity in your company, the better off you're going to be in the long run. Even though in the short term, man, I'm going to get this little infusion of cash. Yeah, but what's the full price of that 10% of that, 10% of what you need back in with some equity stake? So choose your partners really, really carefully. know your strengths, know your partner's strengths, have a process for handling conflict, and have it written down what the buyout looks like. Have the exit plan written and agreed upon. And look, I know I that's the advice I'm giving. I also can show you a whole bunch of companies who didn't follow that advice that have done really, really well. And I can also show you a bunch that didn't follow that advice and kind of had a lot of problems. So that's my take on partners. Be thoughtful, be prayerful, be kind, and in a partnership, remember, if I'm expecting the other person to be a great partner, I need to remember, what does it mean for me to be a great teammate, and to be the kind of teammate that partner deserves, so that I can, and that we have accountability, that I can expect the same thing back.
Nice, really good advice there. We're just about out of time, but there's one more question. I think it's a good one to end on. But someone asked, what are some book recommendations for an entrepreneur, specifically one that already started a business but is looking to maybe bring skills to the next level? And this can be part of our follow-up too.
Awesome, very good. Well, I'm going to send in the follow-up, I'm going to send you a sheet that will have about, I think there's 7 or 8 books that are listed with a little bit of a sales pitch about maybe why you might want to read it. So I'm going to send that. The second thing I want to tell all of you about, and I have no stake in this company, I don't know the founder, but we found it super useful. It's a company called Read It For Me, READITFORME, Read It For Me, that does synopsis, essentially the old Cliff Notes of Shakespeare now applied to business books. It's a great service. It's not terribly expensive, creates tons of value. If I was going to go, if you're in a space where you're starting to think about growing the company, a great book is Traction by Gino Wickham, which is a process. It's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Really, really good one. There's another one called Rocket Fuel, which is quite good. And then Patrick Lencioni's book, The Advantage, which really looks at the traits of functional companies and how they grow, but is surprisingly non-analytic, is a really another great read. And if you want something that's fun to read, that will, if you want something a little more philosophical, Canoeing the Mountains by Todd Bolsinger, which was really written about how to sort of clues about how you grow and adapt.
We're out of time, but this was so much fun. I want to thank you, Dr. Field, for being here with us today. Thank you and the audience for your great questions and participation. And we'll be back next month on May 3rd. We'll be tackling how to maintain family harmony during transition planning. So if you asked that question today, you might want to come back next month. That should be a really great episode. So we'll hope you join us then on May 3rd. Until then, take good care, and we hope to see you online soon.